Yoshida was a disgusting old gooner who got curved by his MILF crush and lost the will to live. However, when he takes in a homeless girl with mommy milkers to get over his heartbreak, she begs to become his milkmaid to repay his kindness. It all begins in a restaurant where Yoshida's blue balls finally push him to confess to his office crush, Ayuri. However, she rejects him instantly, claiming she's already dating a Chad. Heartbroken, Yoshida drags himself to a bar with his co-worker Hashimoto and cries over Ayuri. Realizing his friend has too many drinks, Hashimoto tells Yoshida to head home and he reluctantly agrees. While stumbling home, Yoshida spots a girl sitting alone under a streetlight. Curious, he asks why she's out this late, and the girl casually responds that she has nowhere to go. When he questions whether she's really planning to sleep there, she casually suggests crashing at his place like it's the most normal thing in the world. Yoshida calls her an idiot for even saying that when suddenly the girl throws out a wild offer. If he lets her stay, she'll let him sleep with her. For a moment, Yoshida glitches into anime protagonist mode, but he quickly snaps out of it and declines. However, after enough pestering from her, he finally caves and brings her home. As soon as they enter, the girl scans the apartment and calls it a crack den. Yoshida ignores the insult and heads to bed when suddenly the weirdo starts stripping down and joins him. She offers him one last chance to wreck her guts, but all Yoshida wants right now is soup.
Huh?
The next morning, the smell of food pulls him into the kitchen, where the same girl is casually cooking like she pays rent. When he asks what she's doing, she reminds him that he asked for soup last night. Still suspicious, he accuses her of trying to drug him, but she snaps at him and says he is the one who brought her home. Once Yoshida finally remembers everything, he calms down and tries the bowl of soup. Introducing herself as Sayu, the girl teases Yoshida that he'd probably enjoy the soup more if it was made by Ayuri. Shocked, Yoshida asks how she knows about Ayuri, and Sayu casually reveals that he spent half the night mumbling about her. As he sulks in silence, Sayu suddenly flashes her senpai snacks and claims she knows how to make a man happy. However, Yoshida immediately shuts her down again, saying he doesn't need a stranger trying to fix him. Instead of backing off, Sayu unbuttons her sweater further and tempts Yoshida by revealing how big her jugs are.
Nice.
He glances for a second and admits that whoever created her definitely had one hand down his pants, but he's still not interested. Rather than giving up, Sayu climbs into his lap and calls him weird for not wanting to sleep with her. Yoshida pushes her off and instead asks for her ID. Upon inspecting her ID card, he sighs, realizing she is from a different city. When he asks how long she's been away from home, Sayu casually drops that it's been 6 months. He follows up by asking if she even told her parents, but she claims they're probably happier without her. Realizing she's completely aimless, Yoshida asks what she plans to do when he eventually kicks her out. Sayu remains quiet until Yoshida suggests getting a job. However, she complains that nothing pays enough to cover rent anyway. Not wanting her to end up trading back shots for hot Cheetos, Yoshida decides to let her stay, but only if she works for it. Sayu tears up and instantly agrees to look after the chores in his absence. The next day at work, Yoshida fills Hashimoto in on the situation. Hashimoto listens, then warns him not to get attached to a fanservice queen. That night, Sayu greets him with a sarcastic "Welcome home, daddy," but he ignores her and heads inside. To his surprise, he finds all his shirts perfectly ironed. After dinner, he steps out to smoke, but Sayu tells him he can do it in front of her. Yoshida declines, saying it's not polite to smoke in front of a woman. Confused, Sayu mentions that other men never cared. That comment triggers a quick lecture from Yoshida, where he tells her to stop letting guys treat her she's worthless. The next day, tired of seeing Sayu in the same crusty uniform, Yoshida takes her shopping. On the way home, she quietly admits she doesn't know how to repay him. That's when Yoshida realizes she's not a hoe, she just doesn't know how to say thank you like a normal person. He then tells Sayu that if she really wants to return the favor, she should stick to cleaning. Back home, Sayu laughs when he shows her the futon he picked out for her. Hearing her genuinely happy, Yoshida tells her she sounds cute, which instantly short-circuits her brain. Later at the office, Hashimoto casually mentions that everyone thinks he has a girlfriend. When Yoshida asks why, Hashimoto reveals that he has started looking fresh, which is a clear sign he has a warm kitty waiting for him at home. On the weekend, Yoshida takes Sayu shopping again. He points out how she does not have a cell phone, and Sayu admits she threw her last one in the ocean because her classmates kept sending texts. Yoshida insists that she still needs a phone and offers to buy it for her, but Sayu turns him down, saying she likes not owning one. However, he notices the sad smile on her face, which troubles him, but he decides to stay quiet for now. Returning home, Yoshida finds Sayu sulking in the dark. When he asks her what's bothering her, Sayu starts to laugh awkwardly. This time, he tells her that she does not need to force out a smile or laughter if she doesn't feel happy. Gathering her guts, Sayu admits that she is curious about why he is so nice to her. She even tells him that for his sake, she'll stop pretending, but the truth is, she has been faking it for so long that she has forgotten how to express her true emotions. After hearing her, Yoshida tells her to take it easy. He also clarifies that he is not a nice guy. She just has experience with terrible men. Sayu then vows to be the best roomie ever, which makes Yoshida laugh his silly head off. He states that she is the nice one here because ever since she came, his house started to look spotless clean. The next evening at work, Yoshida tells his junior, Mishima, that her code is full of bugs and needs to be fixed before the deadline. Since time is short, she is asked to stay late and fix it. Once Mishima finally finishes her work, Yoshida brings her some food so his corporate slave doesn't die out. As they eat, she thanks him for always looking out for her, then asks why he is so focused on helping her in particular. Yoshida responds by saying it's because she can't handle things on her own for now. Changing subjects, Mishima points out how he has started dressing better lately, then asks if he is seeing someone. That's when he brings up the rejection he got from Airi, revealing that he is still single as the loser watching this video. Surprisingly, Mishima perks up at that and thinks this is a sign from the universe. She finishes her food and casually asks Yoshida out for beer. He agrees, though not very enthusiastically. Later, when Yoshida gets home, he spends a few awkward minutes apologizing to Sayu for being late. She eventually forgives him, puts away the food she made earlier, and gives him a cold beer like a slave from the dark web. The next day during lunch break, Yoshida takes Hashimoto to shop for a new phone. He keeps checking different models, clearly being picky. When Hashimoto asks what's taking so long, he explains that the phone is for Sayu, and it needs to be the right one. Hashimoto warns him not to get too attached or he might end up falling for her, but he shrugs it off, saying he only likes MILFs with honkers bigger than their faces. Back at the office, Yoshida starts checking his watch over and over. That's when Airi suddenly tells him to meet her after work. Before he leaves, Hashimoto jokes that he better shave his pubes before meeting her. Later at the restaurant, things get awkward fast. Airi drinks her beer like it's water while he just stares at her show-stopping bazookas.
Nice.
She catches him, asks if he likes the view, and he nearly chokes on his drink. When Yoshida questions why she even invited him out after rejecting him, Airi suggests they ask each other questions to make things less tense. He asks why she wanted to see him, and instead of answering, she flips the question and asks if he is seeing someone. Yoshida says no, but she doesn't believe him and starts asking about his connection with Mishima. Airi also mentions his new appearance and wonders if something's going on. He explains there's nothing happening with Mishima and says his feelings haven't changed, even after being rejected. He asks why it matters to her, and Airi admits she doesn't like the idea of him liking someone else after saying he loved her. She apologizes for the mixed signals and says that was the only reason for calling him out. Then she lets him ask one last question. Now knowing she is a thought final boss, Yoshida just asks about her chest size.
Yeah, boy.
And the answer leaves him feeling like Isaac Newton when he discovered gravity. When he returns, Sayu quickly notices that something's bothering him. Yoshida tries to brush it off, but she doesn't give up, so he tells her about the meetup and complains about how nothing romantic happened. She gives him a hug to cheer him up and says the bath is ready. After relaxing in the bath, he eats the soup Sayu made and finally gives her the new phone. Her face lights up with excitement, and for a moment, everything feels peaceful, like a small win after a long, weird day. After having a dream about one of the guys who released his mayo between her buns, Sayu can't help but wonder why Yoshida won't touch her. Meanwhile at the office, Yoshida schools Mishima when they are joined by their colleague, Endo. He complains that since he decided to not go on the company trip, he has to take his position. Yoshida apologizes, but Endo waves it off and quickly asks who is the baddie he has been clapping. Confused, Yoshida tells him there is no baddie, just his right hand. Instead of arguing further, Endo takes this as a sign to goon on company's time and walks away while Mishima kicks Yoshida. She expresses that she is frustrated with him but doesn't explain why. During the evening, Mishima proudly tells Yoshida that she finished her work early. Proud of her, he praises her, prompting Mishima to ask for a reward. Before Yoshida can unzip his pants, Mishima begs him to watch a movie with her. Sighing, Yoshida agrees and follows Mishima when he comes across Airi. He tells her a quick hello and walks away while Airi looks at him completely confused. Back at Yoshida's, Sayu sulks, realizing the second her daddy doesn't want her, he will throw her out just like every other guy she encountered. Sayu also worries that if Yoshida gets a girlfriend, then it's really game over for her, as no woman would tolerate another X chromosome. Her fear comes true when Yoshida texts to inform her that he is watching a movie with a colleague. A few hours later, Yoshida exits the theater alongside Mishima and discusses how the romance film affirmed his belief in destined love stories. Hearing this, Mishima claims she has already met her destined person. Yoshida responds by encouraging her to pursue him, when she suddenly grabs him without warning. This happens just as Sayu spots them together and runs off. Upon being hugged by a flat board, Yoshida pulls away quickly in disgust. Mishima masks her disappointment with a polite smile and thanks him for the movie outing. But before saying goodbye, she briefly asks what he would do if she were his destined partner. but he shuts the thought down and turns away. Upon returning home and noticing Sayu is missing, Yoshida panics and rushes outside to search for her. Meanwhile, Sayu sits at a nearby park and tries to talk herself out of the sadness that gradually overwhelms her until the tears begin to fall. A few moments later, Mishima comes across her and, sensing her distress, decides to stay by her side until the final train. As they sit together, Mishima realizes that Sayu is a runaway and shares how she also ran away from home when she was full of youth. This leads her to ask about Sayu's relationship with her parents. Sayu speaks highly of them and describes them as kind, even though their kindness didn't stop her from leaving. However, when she hints at hiding feelings for someone, Mishima spends the next half hour giving a casual crash course in love, encouraging her to express her feelings no matter the outcome. Once the talk ends, Sayu stands up, newly motivated to return home and speak her truth. When Yoshida arrives, he pulls Sayu aside and demands an explanation, but before she can respond, Mishima interjects with a question about whether he is her father. Yoshida quickly denies that, making Mishima wonder if her crush was ever on the Lolicon Island with Stephen Hawking. However, she decides not to say anything further and bids Sayu goodbye after telling Yoshida to have a good explanation tomorrow. As they arrive back home, Yoshida goes to freshen up when Sayu approaches him in nothing but her black plot armor.
Oh my.
Having experienced Sayu's thottery before, Yoshida nonchalantly asks her to dress before talking, but she refuses and insists that he listen. Sayu starts by telling Yoshida that he needs to understand that she is a woman and not some brat. He responds by saying he is well aware of that. Growing confident, Sayu moves closer. She questions whether he truly feels nothing for her. When he angrily reminds her of the boundary he set about such behavior, Sayu becomes emotional and pulls him in, revealing how other men had no hesitation in using her. Shocked by this, Yoshida freezes while Sayu grows desperate for answers. She grabs his junk and asks him if he is attracted to her or not. Finally breaking character, Yoshida admits that she woke his black python sleeping in his pants.
Yeah, boy.
Getting the answer she wanted, Sayu blushes and finally steps back. She then reveals that she once tried to earn her keep with the previous men she lived with, but knowing they would all get in trouble for housing a runaway like her, she decided to pay with her holes. At first she hated it, but then started to like the feeling of being wanted and needed by these men. Sayu admits to Yoshida that his constant rejection to give her back shots has left her feeling very confused. She doesn't know how to repay him since all he has ever asked for in return is a clean kitchen. Sayu leans in again, this time pleading with Yoshida to let her bend over for him, as this would help her feel like she is not just a burden who would be discarded. Instead of rejecting her, Yoshida pulls her into a hug. While holding her, he compliments her appearance, explaining that while she does have those S-rank bazookas, he is not in love with her, and for him love is a requirement for intimacy in his life. Once Sayu processes his response, he tells her to put on some clothes. Sayu hurries and puts on her p's, and then Yoshida further explains to her that she needs to stop thinking that she is a burden. He assures that her presence has brought light into what used to be a very dull life, and simply talking to her has helped him regain a sense of peace. Hearing this, Sayu tears up and Yoshida gives her space to cry. He then follows up by asking her to continue helping him feel more like himself, not through offers of her body, but through kindness and support. She responds by hugging him back and promising to keep doing exactly that. A few nights later, Sayu asks for permission to get a part-time job and is caught off guard when Yoshida agrees, thinking that she needs to learn how to make bank without using her nunu. To further motivate Sayu, Yoshida says it could be a good experience for her and suggests that she also try to make some friends. The following day at a convenience store, Sayu gets trained by an old part-timer named Asami. Upon learning Sayu is a dropout, Asami calls her a crazy glue sniffer. She then walks her through the basics, and Sayu later learns they are the same age. After the store closes that evening, Asami finds out they live near each other and asks to stop by Sayu's place. When Sayu mentions that her guardian might not be okay with it, Asami asks if she is co-living with a boyfriend. Sayu quickly clarifies that he is more like a brother figure, which only makes Asami more curious about what kind of brother he actually is. Later that night, Yoshida receives a message from Sayu saying she is home with Asami. He tries to respond, but Mishima tries peeking at his screen and starts asking questions. When Hashimoto joins in and asks how long she has known, Mishima realizes he's also in the loop and starts arguing with Yoshida for keeping her in the dark. In the meantime, Ayuri quietly observes the whole thing from her seat. When he returns home, Sayu opens the door, and Asami immediately roasts him for looking like a low-effort NPC. Yoshida ignores her and enters the apartment when Asami questions him about his relationship with Sayu. Both Sayu and Yoshida quickly come up with a fake backstory about being old friends. Once Sayu starts preparing dinner, Yoshida scrambles to make up shared memories to keep the story believable and avoid suspicion. Sayu finishes cooking and Asami is instantly in awe with her culinary skills. She asks her if she came straight out of Gordon Ramsay's sack. Asami then decides to overstay her visit and gobbles up Sayu's food like a hungry goblin. Soon after, Yoshida notices Asami getting too relaxed and tells her to leave. She agrees but insists he walk her home because she is too pretty to walk alone. Sayu offers to go too, but Asami tells her to stay back. While walking her home, Yoshida gets told by Asami to stop pretending to be Sayu's old friend. He thinks through his options and decides that lying any further isn't worth it. He tells her the truth that they live together, but doesn't disclose anything further for Sayu's sake. He also says he wants Sayu to be the one to share the full story. Asami says he passed her test and tells him not to follow her since she doesn't want anyone seeing her place. Before parting ways, Yoshida tells Asami to stop by his place again so she can become good friends with Sayu. Realizing he truly cares about Sayu, Asami casually advises Yoshida to pay attention to Sayu as she hides her emotions well. The next night after work, Yoshida tries to send a message to Sayu when Ayuri suddenly shows up and asks him out again. Yoshida agrees and follows after her while Mishima watches them with jealousy. At the restaurant, Ayuri tells Yoshida that she loves meat but he ignores her and worries about Sayu. Noticing his behavior, Ayuri tries to grab his attention when Yoshida asks what she really wants. Ayuri, being a nosy hoe, tells Yoshida that she has noticed how often he's on his phone these days and asks if he is talking to someone. In return, Yoshida questions why she is suddenly curious about his life and bluntly says he will only answer if she explains her own intentions. Ayuri puts down her drink and says there is a reason she watches him so closely, to build up the plot. She squeezes her melons and finally confesses to liking him. Meanwhile, Sayu finishes cooking at home and excitedly texts Yoshida until she sees the message about his date with Ayuri. Ayuri continues and admits she never had a boyfriend, which surprises Yoshida. He asks why she rejected him back then, and Ayuri nervously explains that she is a Capricorn and firmly believed their timings were not aligning at that time. However, Yoshida doesn't buy her hoe's explanation and asks her to stop playing mind games. Ayuri insists that her feelings are real and claims she would do anything to prove it. Seizing the moment, Yoshida jokingly asks if she would sleep with him.
Yeah, boy.
Ayuri goes quiet. Yoshida nervously tells her it was a joke when Ayuri confesses she has never visited Pound Town before. Now fumbling with his words, Yoshida asks her how her balloons got so big when there was no one to blow them. Ayuri, who is equally nervous, explains that she never had the chance to explore relationships, so he tells her to relax. He then says he won't ask her out again, and if anything's going to happen between them, she will have to be the one to speak up next time. Not liking the sudden shift in Yoshida's behavior, Ayuri angrily asks if he ever liked her. He assures her that he still likes her a lot, but he's a king who knows his worth. Ayuri accepts the challenge and promises Yoshida that in the future, she will chase after him. Moving forward, Ayuri then asks who he keeps texting so much. Back home, Sayu tries to enjoy her meal alone, but a painful memory surfaces and sends her running to the bathroom. While she is still shaken, she receives a message from Yoshida stating that he is bringing Ayuri home, which makes her even more upset. Understanding the situation, Sayu tells him that she'll leave so he can get privacy with Ayuri, just as she starts thinking about how she is going to get abandoned. Yoshida texts again, explaining that Ayuri actually wants to meet her. On the way to his apartment, Yoshida gives Ayuri the same old friend story he and Sayu had used for Asami. When they arrive, Ayuri greets Sayu with a casual hello and hands over some snacks. A few moments in, Ayuri calls out the lie, saying she knows they're not old friends and admits she is surprised Yoshida has the guts to live comfortably with a girl. She then turns to Sayu and asks if Yoshida ever made a move on her, which prompts Sayu to explain how she is still shocked he has never even tried. For a second, the girls wonder if they need to feed Yoshida some Viagra, prompting him to defend his honor. A few moments later, they both notice Sayu acting strange. Ayuri checks in again, but she brushes it off as nothing. After another try and still getting the same answer, Yoshida senses the growing tension and excuses himself to use the restroom. Once he leaves, Sayu avoids Ayuri's gaze, so she gently suggests they talk privately and asks her if she has anything she wants to get off her chest. When Yoshida returns, Sayu says she needs a few groceries. Before he heads out, Yoshida asks if she's okay being alone with Ayuri. She assures him it's fine, so he leaves. As soon as Sayu sits down, Ayuri starts asking how she ended up living at Yoshida's place. Sayu opens up and explains everything. Ayuri follows up by asking why she ran away, but Sayu avoids that question. Shifting gears, Ayuri asks when she plans to leave. Meanwhile, Yoshida, on his way to the store, runs into Mishima, who says she had just come from watching a movie. When he tells her that she could have gone to the theater in her district, she casually claims she felt like taking a walk near his place and then asks where he is going. Yoshida tells her about Sayu's grocery request, which makes her start acting curious, as if she didn't already know Sayu lived with him and then she decides to join him. Back at the apartment, Sayu stays quiet. Ayuri, still waiting for an answer, says that no matter what Sayu does, people will still see her as an immature girl, something she can't escape just by running away. She thinks her words might sting a little, but instead, Sayu starts thanking her for being honest about her situation. She then begins talking about the different men she lived with and admits that sometimes, being intimate with them made her feel wanted. When she brings up that Yoshida was the only one who never tried anything, Ayuri lets out a laugh, saying she is not surprised, and further adds that she's glad Yoshida became her safe space. Ayuri then says it's okay for her to accept kindness, but also warns her to be careful not to take it for granted, as that could end up hurting Yoshida. Sayu admits that going back to her old life still terrifies her, but she understands it's not right to stay with him forever. She promises she will eventually face her past so that Yoshida doesn't end up in a situation he can't explain. Ayuri gives her a hug and tells her to take things at her own pace, letting Sayu cry into her jacket without holding back. At that moment, Yoshida and Mishima are wrapping up their shopping. Just as they're about to leave, Mishima suddenly asks if she can stay the night. Yoshida says only a girlfriend would get that privilege. She brings up Sayu, and he repeats that he just wants to help her. Then she asks about Ayuri. Yoshida tries to change the subject, but she bursts out, saying she saw him walking home with Ayuri earlier. Surprised, he asks how she knew, and she explains that she had followed them from the train station to his place. After apologizing for acting like a creepy stalker, Mishima says she doesn't like how he always keeps things about Ayuri from her, wondering why he should even tell her anything. Yoshida struggles to give a solid answer. Back at the apartment, Sayu finishes crying. Ayuri asks if she has any questions, and Sayu, now calmer, asks if she actually loves Yoshida. Ayuri teases her a bit, but then sees that she is serious. Sayu admits that she can tell Yoshida loves her, and she wants to know how she feels in return. Ayuri confesses that she does love him and says her feelings started back when he first joined the company. While the two of them quietly plan how to help her relationship with Yoshida move forward, Yoshida walks with Mishima when he suddenly brings up her earlier behavior. Mishima explains that she asked all those odd questions because she thought he had sent Sayu away just to spend time with Ayuri. When Yoshida says he would never say do something like that, Mishima asks if he truly loves Ayuri. He confesses that he is basically head over heels. That's when she questions why Sayu is still in the picture if he is serious about Ayuri. Yoshida responds by asking if she wants him to kick Sayu out, but Mishima clarifies that she just wants to know where his priorities lie. She gets upset again and says that if he really loved Ayuri, he wouldn't struggle with that choice and instantly kick Sayu to the curb. She then asks if he is starting to catch feelings for Sayu. Yoshida says no, but Mishima gets up, tells him he is too kind for his own good, and apologizes for crossing the line before walking off. When he returns home, Yoshida finds Ayuri putting makeup on Sayu like they are doing a clown show. They ask for his opinion, but Yoshida freezes and can't speak properly, so they tell him to work on his riz. A little later, he walks Ayuri home. On the way, she jokingly warns him to keep his distance from Sayu, or she will be the one to call the authorities. She then asks if he's really capable of living with someone like Sayu without crossing any lines. Yoshida reassures her, but Ayuri tells him to pay attention to Sayu's feelings anyway. She admits that during their time together, she noticed something off. Something that looked like a hidden crush. Yoshida takes the comment more seriously than she expects, so she tells him to relax. With a small smile, she says she trusts that he only wants what's best for Sayu. A few days later at work, Sayu tries to figure out who is behind a new name on the employee roster when Yaguchi walks in, and it turns out he is one of the many bozos she slept with. He immediately recognizes her and starts bringing up how they French kissed until his wee-wee would say bonjour. However, Sayu denies everything while trying not to lose her composure. As Yaguchi insists he knows her and calls her Miyuki, she nervously tells him that he is mistaken as her name is Sayu. Just as tension between the two escalates, Asami steps in and tells Yaguchi to get back to the register. He tries to spill the tea about Sayu, but Asami shuts it down fast. Picking up on the awkward vibe, she sends Yaguchi off and closes the door so she can talk to Sayu privately. Instead of pressing her for answers, she gives her a comforting pat on the head and says she will always be around if she ever wants an unpaid therapist. That evening on her way home, Sayu runs into Yaguchi again. He admits he has been waiting and casually asks if she is staying somewhere new. Already knowing the answer, he comments on how bold she is for hooking up with strangers. Sayu tries to ignore him and walk away, but he grabs her arm and demands to see where she is living. She refuses, saying her roommate wouldn't be okay with it, but Yaguchi keeps pushing. Eventually, she says no firmly and starts to leave, only for him to threaten to tell Asami and the manager everything about her past unless she lets him in. Nervous and shaken, Sayu asks if he really just wants to see the place. Yaguchi promises to behave, so she sends Yoshida a quick message to avoid alarming him. When they get there, Yaguchi glances around before asking if Yoshida has tried anything with her yet. Sayu explains their living arrangement, but he doubts her. Then, to test the water, he tries to recreate their past and makes physical advances. Sayu pushes him away, but he doesn't stop, so she slaps him. That only makes things worse as he gets aggressive, and she begins to panic, thinking about all the damage it could cause Yoshida if Yaguchi exposes the truth. To avoid more trouble for Yoshida, she freezes and tells Yaguchi to get done in 3 seconds, which shouldn't be a challenge for him. Fortunately, before anything happens, Yoshida walks in and stops everything. After making sure Sayu is alright, Yoshida kicks Yaguchi out and demands to know what he was trying to pull. Yaguchi makes it clear that he wanted to feel Sayu's gorilla grip cha-cha once more and mocks Yoshida for wasting what Sayu is apparently offering for free. Despite being furious, Yoshida holds back. Yaguchi then asks if he is really planning to keep Sayu around. Yoshida answers that she can stay as long as she needs to. Upon hearing this, Yaguchi laughs and says he will end up behind bars if he keeps Sayu for long, since they both know Sayu is freakier than your mom after 2 shots of tequila. Yoshida responds that he is simply trying to be a decent adult who knows how to keep himself in check. Done with the conversation, Yaguchi tells Yoshida that he is stronger than him because he would have filled Sayu with so much of his dana that it would change her ancestry. After everything sinks in, Yoshida cries in frustration over what Sayu's been through. After composing himself, he then checks on her. Seeing Yoshida, Sayu breaks down again, saying she doesn't understand why she felt afraid even though she had already been with Yaguchi so many times. Yoshida hugs her and explains that fear is a normal response. Unable to control herself, Sayu keeps crying, so he gently tells her not to treat herself like she is a crusty sock and let her past trap her forever. After another long hug, Yoshida promises to protect her, even if the rest of the world doesn't approve. The next day at work, Sayu zones out while stocking snacks. Isami notices and asks if something happened with Yaguchi, but Sayu hides the trauma behind her smile. This time, Isami doesn't let her get away with it. She marches up to Yaguchi and asks him directly. Instead of dodging anything, he casually admits he tried to get with Sayu but got rejected. Furious, Isami demands to know if he tried anything else. Yaguchi further confesses he got forceful and nearly got fed a knuckle sandwich for it. Upon hearing this, Isami makes him apologize to Sayu, but a customer shows up, so she goes to assist them. Left alone, Yaguchi tells Sayu he actually regrets what he did. Sayu asks why he didn't tell Isami the full story, and he reminds her of the deal. No snitching in exchange for seeing her new sugar daddy's place. Sayu laughs at his twisted sense of loyalty and says she isn't mad anymore, but she still prays that his future wife cheats on him with a bee. She further warns that if he ever tries to mess with her again, he won't get off so easy. Yaguchi gets up and mutters that Yoshida must be an idiot for turning her into a decent girl without ever getting a taste of that punani. Hearing this, Sayu feels lighter than she has in a long time. Later, while heading home with Isami, Sayu receives a message from Yoshida explaining that he is staying overnight at the office. Isami grabs the phone and asks Yoshida if they can have a sleepover. Chill as ever, he agrees and thanks Isami for looking after Sayu. Isami waves it off, explaining that since her parents aren't home, they might as well break into their wine cabinet. A little while later, Sayu finds herself gaping at Isami's mansion in disbelief. After grabbing what she needed, they decide to head to the park when Isami explains that her parents are loaded but rarely have time for her due to their busy schedules. In return, Sayu opens up and shares the truth about the choices she made that led her to living with Yoshida. They spend the evening stargazing and reflecting on their pasts. Isami talks about her dream of becoming an author and then holds Sayu's hands and tells her not to beat herself up over her mistakes, as those experiences helped her grow. That pushes Sayu over the edge, and she starts crying again. Isami, holding back her own tears, tells her it's okay to fall apart sometimes and promises to always be there to help put her back together. The next day, Yoshida comes home early, saying he stayed at the office all night to catch up on work. He tells her he already brought dinner and starts apologizing for not being there after the incident with Yaguchi. Sayu reassures him that it's okay. She thanks him for helping her learn to value herself and reveals she is finally starting to think about her future. Hearing this, Yoshida gives her a gentle pat on the head and promises to keep supporting her for as long as she needs. The next day at the store, Isami asks Sayu to check if Yoshida replied to her request to visit again. After seeing that he is fine with it, Sayu heads off to restock the shelves. Right then, a car pulls up outside, and Isami mentions it's been parked nearby a lot recently, but no one ever seems to come out. Sayu becomes tense at the mention of the car, but remains quiet for now. Later that day at Yoshida's place, Asami grows frustrated with a problem she is trying to solve and hands it over to Sayu, who instantly tells Asami that she could solve this in her sleep. In response, Asami throws out a list of dramatic excuses to defend her limited processing power. Sayu tries walking her through the steps, but Asami decides it's break time and rants about how she still has to somehow ace the entire course to chase her dream of becoming an author. This reminds Sayu of her own conversation with Yoshida about the future, causing her to quietly drift into thought. When Asami checks if she is okay, Sayu makes an excuse that she's just brainstorming dinner ideas. Asami jumps in to help, and after a while they agree on having a lavish dinner. Meanwhile at the office, Yoshida receives a text from Sayu sharing her dinner plans. As he reads it, a smile forms on his lips. Mishima stares from a distance, visibly fuming with jealousy. Her mood worsens when Ayuri strolls over, clearly throwing herself at Yoshida while asking for help. Once Ayuri walks away, Mishima wastes no time and invites her enemy to lunch. They soon sit down together, and Ayuri casually tells Mishima that she looks flat like a pole. Ignoring the remark, Mishima, dead serious, asks what she thinks about Yoshida. Recovering from her bluntness, Ayuri plays it cool and says she has noticed his recent glow-up and mentions there are whispers about him having a girlfriend. Mishima follows up by asking if she knows about Sayu, and Ayuri replies that she has already spoken with her during a visit to Yoshida's place. Curious, Mishima asks if she is worried about Sayu possibly stealing Yoshida away, but Ayuri responds calmly, saying she can't control other people's feelings. Mishima insists it's better to fight for what you want, but Ayuri shrugs it off, stating love doesn't work that way. Mishima then lashes out, announcing to the whole world that if a hussy like Sayu steals Yoshida, then she is going to show Shibuya a real incident. Shocked, Ayuri tells her to relax and says it's best to wait and see where Yoshida's feelings land. When Mishima accuses her of pretending not to care, Ayuri explains that love should not be forced, and it only hurts you if you push your feelings on someone. That evening, Yoshida is just reading a message from Sayu when Mishima appears and asks to watch a movie together again. Sensing his hesitation, Mishima gets desperate and asks him why he is so occupied. In response, Yoshida shows her the message from Sayu. However, this only pushes her to get bolder, so she suggests exchanging numbers, claiming it's only fair since Sayu and Ayuri already have his contact. Yoshida gives her his phone but warns her that he is not going to reply to a single reel she sends him. Hearing this, Mishima snaps and accuses him of only doing what he thinks is right without truly considering others' feelings. When he asks if she is referring to herself, she drops the act and asks why he can't see that she is madly in love with him. With that, she calmly hands the phone back and says it's okay if he doesn't reply. However, after seeing that crash out, Yoshida assures her he will reply to her. Mishima takes this as a sign and quickly asks if they can watch a movie later like a pathetic loser with no self-respect. Yoshida agrees, and before leaving, she teases him for always being the obedient type who follows directions. Later at home, Sayu excitedly chats with Yoshida during dinner, telling him about Asami's study stress and the mission they went on to make dinner. But he is clearly distracted, still mulling over what Mishima said. When she notices and asks, he switches topics and tells her to keep cooking with Asami since he gets to have heaven-tier food. That weekend, Sayu throws herself into chores when Yoshida offers to help. Sayu rejects the offer, so Yoshida goes off to shower. That's when Sayu stumbles upon an old box and finds his graduation album. She flips through and notices Yoshida was basically the one-punch man during his academy days. Sayu then spots a picture of a girl. When he walks in and sees her looking, he admits the girl was his old girlfriend. Sayu starts teasing him, and he quickly asks her to put the album away. He confesses that his first girlfriend was his senpai, who eventually grew tired of his possessive, clingy behavior. Shrugging away the old memories, Yoshida claims that when two people are in love, it's their duty to look after one another. Hearing this, Sayu slowly asks if he would take care of her. But when Yoshida asks her to repeat herself, she changes the subject and tells him to stop smoking or he will murder his future swimmers. The next day at work, Asami finishes swapping shifts with Yaguchi when he tells her the suspicious car has returned, but this time, someone actually gets out. When the driver opens the door and Issa steps out, Sayu instantly ducks behind the counter. Yaguchi notices her panic and helps her get to the back, realizing that Issa is someone she doesn't want to face. At the counter, Issa starts questioning Yaguchi about Sayu's whereabouts, but he tells him that nobody by the name of Sayu works here. Meanwhile, in the back room, Sayu confirms to Asami that Issa is her older brother. Moments later, Yaguchi returns and says Issa has already left. Sayu thanks him for helping out, and he admits he has never been a fan of snobby rich types like her brother. He then mentions that Issa seemed genuinely serious about tracking her down, which might mean her runaway chapter is nearing its end. On her way home, Sayu gets lost in thought, wondering what will happen now that Issa knows where she is. Her phone buzzes with a text from Yoshida, who says he'll be working late again. To keep herself busy, she decides to go shopping at the mall. Just as she is about to leave the mall, she suddenly feels a tap on her shoulder. Startled, she turns around and nearly jumps, seeing Mishima's ugly face. After catching her breath, Sayu tells her she's out grocery shopping for Yoshida, while Mishima explains she came for a solo movie night. Before they can talk more, Sayu spots Issa nearby. She quickly hides behind Mishima and whispers for help. Sensing how serious Sayu looks, Mishima doesn't question her and instead helps her sneak away. They rush out of the mall and find shelter at a nearby karaoke place. Once inside, Sayu keeps thanking her over and over. Mishima tells her to calm down and suggests texting Yoshida to explain, but Sayu hesitates, unsure how to tell him without making him worry. Taking this as an opportunity, Mishima informs Yoshida herself. Meanwhile, at the office, Yoshida finishes up a project while Hashimoto teases him about Sayu, only for him to suddenly frown at his phone when the text from Mishima comes through. Mishima finishes a karaoke song and offers the mic to Sayu, who refuses, saying she only likes opening her mouth for a juicy images. Sitting beside her, Mishima asks if she's hiding because she committed a murder. Sayu admits she has a body count, but not that kind. Mishima doesn't pry further and instead shifts the topic, asking why Sayu went shopping when she knew someone was looking for her. Sayu says she still wants to do her part for Yoshida, but Mishima finds that silly and reminds her Yoshida wouldn't be upset over a skipped chore. She then gets more serious, asking Sayu if she has thought about what happens next. Sayu admits she has been thinking about going home, though she hasn't decided yet. Mishima tells her that her choices from now on will matter, not just for herself, but also for Yoshida. And it's clear they've grown close, and that if she doesn't start thinking about what she truly wants, she could hurt both herself and him. Finally, Mishima asks Sayu if running away has helped her reach the goal she had when she left home, but Sayu falls silent. Mishima apologizes if she has been too blunt, however someone has to ask the hard questions. Just then, Yoshida arrives and walks into the karaoke room, a little out of breath. He asks why they chose the furthest possible place from town, and Mishima casually replies that they were just wandering around and ended up here. He asks Sayu if she's ready to head back, and when she says yes, he helps her carry her groceries. When she asks for the bag back, he playfully refuses. As they walk out, Mishima watches them, filled with pain. Yoshida asks if she wants to come along, but she declines. Sayu thanks her again, and Yoshida tries to pay for the karaoke session, but Mishima stops him and says he's doing that weird selfish thing again. He then asks if she wants to catch a movie together sometime. She shrugs and says maybe. After they leave, Mishima quietly falls to her knees and begins to cry, heartbroken that Yoshida never looks at her the way he looks at Sayu. On the way home, Sayu asks Yoshida if there's anything he has ever wanted to do with her. They pass a poster advertising a summer festival, and he suggests they go together. She smiles and agrees. The next evening, Sayu dresses in a yukata and meets Yoshida to walk to the festival. He tries not to stare, but she notices and asks if he likes her outfit. He says she looks nice when Sayu asks if it's better than Ayuri's, but he doesn't hear her, so she drops it. At the festival, Sayu sees minions enjoying cotton candy and tells Yoshida she has never had it before. He buys one for her, and when she offers him a bite, he tries to refuse, but ends up giving in. A crotch goblin bumps into Sayu, and she nearly falls, but Yoshida catches her hand just in time. She tells him to keep holding it so she doesn't get lost. They find a spot to watch the fireworks, and as they sit together, Yoshida smiles quietly, thinking about how his life has changed since Sayu came into it. He imagines what his life would have been like without her and doesn't like it one bit. Lost in thought, he suddenly panics when he realizes Sayu isn't next to him. He jumps up, looking around, but she appears behind him and says she had only gone to toss something in the trash. She takes his hand again and teases him for freaking out. As the crowd clears, they remain by the riverbank. Sayu suddenly says she gave out fake names to every guy she stayed with except for him. She tells Yoshida he was the only one who made her feel truly safe. Then she asks if he thinks she should go home. Yoshida pauses, pats her on the head, and says maybe it's time she faced what she left behind. Sayu nods and says she feels ready now. Before they leave, she asks if things would have been different if she were older. Before he can speak, she immediately tells him not to answer, saying it doesn't really matter. The next morning, a doorbell rings and wakes them both. Yoshida groggily gets up and goes to open it, expecting a delivery. But standing there is Issa. He introduces himself and says he's come to take Sayu home. Sayu stands behind Yoshida at the door, wide-eyed as her brother Issa announces he's here to take her home. Yoshida is caught off guard, but Sayu quickly tells Issa that she isn't ready to leave yet. Now frustrated, Issa accuses her of being childish and trusting strangers too easily. When he hints at Yoshida possibly having bad intentions, Sayu snaps, defending him as the kindest man she has ever met. Wanting to de-escalate the tension, Yoshida invites Issa inside and calls his office to take the day off. Once off the phone, Issa bluntly asks if anything happened between them, Both Sayu and Yoshida say no, so Issa thanks Yoshida for taking care of his sister. He then turns to Sayu and says their mother has been worried sick. Sayu doesn't buy it and calls him out, demanding the real reason their mother suddenly wants her back. Issa explains that Sayu's teachers had been asking questions and their mother lied, claiming Sayu had been locked in her room. Now the academy believes she was being held captive, and their mother wants her home to clean up the mess. Disturbed by the coldness of the situation, Yoshida asks Issa to give Sayu a few days to think things over. He agrees, but only if he can speak to her alone. Sayu hugs Yoshida tightly before going with Issa to talk in his car. She admits she always knew this moment would come but confesses she's scared. Yoshida tells her not to worry and promises things will be okay. In the car, Issa says he's glad she's safe and admits Yoshida seems like a good man. He then reveals their mother has become increasingly unstable since she left. Sayu explains that life on the run has been hard, but she leaves out the darkest parts. She says she wants to go back, but only after she figures out her next steps. Issa, seeing that she changed, agrees to buy her a week and lies to their mother about not finding her. Later, Asami visits Yoshida's apartment after Sayu texts her. Once inside, Sayu says she wants to share everything she has been hiding. Yoshida and Asami sit down to listen as Sayu opens up about her past. She begins by saying she and her mother never got along, and as a result, she gave up on her education. Her days at the academy were spent in silence and isolation until a girl named Yuko befriended her. Yuko was just like her, quiet, awkward, and ignored by others. For a brief time, life felt a little more bearable. However, after Sayu rejected a popular basketball player, Yuko became the target of vicious bullying. When she could not understand why the bullies didn't come for her instead, Yuko explained it was because she was too pretty and admired, even if no one admitted it. They were too scared to touch her, so they took it out on her. One afternoon, Sayu found Yuko in the bathroom, soaked in toilet water. Yuko told her it was fine, but Sayu had had enough. She promised they'd face it together, thinking it would make things better. But nothing changed. Not long after that, Sayu went up to the rooftop one day and saw Yuko standing on the edge. Sayu panicked and begged her to come back, but Yuko said she wasn't strong enough to handle it anymore. She thanked Sayu for being her only friend and said none of it was her fault. Before Sayu could reach her, Yuko jumped. The shock of that moment destroyed Sayu. She dropped to her knees, numb and trembling. Reporters swarmed their house after the tragedy, looking for a story. Her mother yelled at them to leave, but inside, she blamed Sayu. She accused her of causing Yuko's death and of always being a problem. Sayu snapped and told her she didn't understand anything about what she was going through. Breaking down, she finally announced she couldn't live in that house anymore. On her way out, she ran into Issa, who was coming home. She told him everything that happened, and he gave her a hug. He didn't try to stop her from leaving but took her to a hotel and gave her some money, telling her to stay safe and to call him if she needed help. Sayu promised, but she never called. Weeks passed. Her money ran out, and the weight of loneliness crushed her. She threw her phone away, thinking that cutting ties with everyone would be easier. As she started living on the streets, she met men who acted kind but only wanted one thing. She wandered from place to place, trading her safety for survival until she met Yoshida. He was the first person who didn't ask for anything in return and simply gave her a place to stay. After finishing her story, Sayu breaks down in tears. Asami wraps her arms around her and tells her she's brave for surviving everything. Sayu cries harder, finally letting it all out. Asami holds her until she calms down and eventually falls asleep. That evening, Asami joins Yoshida on the balcony. He leans on the railing, deep in thought. Asami looks at him and asks if he's really going to let Sayu go. Yoshida sighs and says he doesn't have the right to interfere. After all, it's her family's decision. But Asami shakes her head. She tells him that sometimes the people we need aren't related to us by blood. And Sayu doesn't just need to go home. She needs someone who will stand by her and care for her genuinely. With that, she urges him to do something before it's too late. The day after Sayu opens up about her past, Yoshida tells Hashimoto and Mishima about her upcoming return home. They both agree it's probably for the best, but when they notice Yoshida's troubled expression, Mishima asks if there's more to it. He doesn't go into the full story, only mentioning that Sayu's home life is toxic. Hashimoto suggests that Sayu's brother seems supportive and that it might be better to let her family handle it. That night, when Yoshida returns home, he finds Issa waiting outside. After putting his things away, he meets Issa at the park where the two sit down for a serious conversation. Issa apologizes for his earlier attitude and offers Yoshida a drink and explains their family background, how their father, a wealthy company president, wanted their mother to eat Sayu. However, when she refused and Sayu was born, he left. And their mother slowly began resenting Sayu, seeing her as the reason her life fell apart. Issa admits Sayu never had a real parental figure and thanks Yoshida for giving her the care and stability she had never known. Before leaving, Issa asks Yoshida to continue looking after Sayu a little longer, at least until she feels strong enough to return. Later that night, Yoshida shares the conversation with Sayu. She thanks him for listening and says Issa was the only one who ever made her feel like she wasn't completely alone growing up. Still, she admits she's scared to return, though she wants to work through her trauma so she can face her mother one day. The following night, Sayu gives Yoshida a handmade recipe book filled with all the meals she cooked during her stay, so he doesn't fall back on takeout. A few days later at work, Hashimoto invites Yoshida to lunch, but he declines. Hashimoto notices his friend's growing exhaustion and tells him to take a break, though Yoshida brushes it off. Ayuri also notices how overworked and emotionally drained he has become. That evening, Sayu takes Yoshida to a stargazing spot Asami once showed her. As they sit together, she shares a memory of the night she and Asami spoke there. Sayu admits she still regrets what she gave up to survive, but ultimately says she's glad those choices eventually led her to him. Fighting tears, Sayu confesses she tried to run away again earlier in the week, but couldn't bring herself to leave without saying goodbye. She grabs his hand and places it over her heart, asking him to wish her luck as she prepares to return home. Both of them end up crying quietly under the stars. The next day, Hashimoto and Mishima sense that Yoshida is deeply affected by Sayu's departure. Mishima suggests he accompany Sayu to her hometown, but Yoshida declines, saying it would be weird and possibly interfere with her personal growth. Mishima, however, calls him out for being a coward, reminding him how far he's already gone for Sayu. Despite their arguments, Yoshida insists that Sayu needs to handle her own problems. Mishima doesn't press further, but Hashimoto worries Yoshida is now trying to run from his own emotions. That afternoon, Asami calls Yoshida to say Sayu is missing. He immediately tries to call her, but her phone is off. Hashimoto stands up and tells their boss that Yoshida is unwell, so he's taking him home. Mishima volunteers to finish Yoshida's work while they search for Sayu. As Hashimoto drives like a madman, he starts venting. He tells Yoshida that his obsession with Sayu has made him look like an ugly Romeo, and that he needs to either move on or do something real about how he feels. Yoshida says nothing, until finally asking what would happen to their project if he left. Hashimoto tells him to stop thinking like a tool as Sayu needs him more than any deadline. Suddenly, Yoshida gets a call from Ayuri, who tells him Sayu showed up at the office. They rush home and find Sayu waiting outside with Asami and Ayuri. Sayu explains she went there to walk Yoshida home one last time and apologizes for worrying everyone. Ayuri teases Yoshida for panicking, while Asami promises to see Sayu off at the airport. That night, Sayu asks if she can sleep in Yoshida's bed since it's her last night. He agrees but jokingly warns her not to try anything. She lies beside him, trying to relax, but her shaky breathing gives her away. Sensing her fear, Yoshida turns around and tells her he has decided to go with her to her hometown. Sayu doesn't believe him at first, but he promises again, saying he'll help her confront her mother. Overwhelmed, she hugs him and repeatedly thanks him for never giving up on her. The next morning, Asami shows up early to see Sayu off. She gives her a hug so tight it nearly knocks the air out of her. Turning to Yoshida, Asami warns him that if he fails to take care of Sayu, then he will turn his meat into minced meat. Yet despite the threat, her eyes soften as she wishes Sayu good luck on her journey back. A few hours later, Sayu is fast asleep on the plane. In the seat beside her, Issa turns to Yoshida, asking what made him come along. Yoshida simply answers. He felt responsible for Sayu and wanted to make sure she was truly safe with their mother. Issa nods, but warns him that their mother might not believe he looked after Sayu with no ulterior motives. Sayu stirs and wakes up, checking to see if Yoshida is still beside her. When she sees that he is, a smile creeps onto her face. Suddenly, Yoshida reminds her that he promised to stay by her side, which relaxes Sayu a little. Once they land in Hokkaido, Issa's driver picks them up. On the ride, Issa glances at Sayu and notices she has gone quiet, lost in thought. Sensing her tension, he tells them to take a few hours to themselves before heading home. Sayu visibly brightens at the suggestion. They stop by a small cafe, and Sayu tells Yoshida she has never been to one before. As they browse the menu and place their orders, she gazes out the window and sees two girls chatting outside. The sight reminds her of Yuko, and the memories come flooding back. Yoshida notices the shift in her expression and gently changes the subject. Sayu begins telling him about how her mother always made her believe that going out with friends was wrong. Her weekends were spent locked indoors, and any attempt to stay out after the academy was met with punishment. Only after running away did she realize how normal it was to go out and make memories. She smiles and says how happy she is to be on a casual outing at a cafe with him. When Yoshida asks if she's scared to return home, Sayu admits she is, but knowing he's there makes it easier. Later, Issa comes to pick them up. Before heading home, Sayu asks to visit one more place, her old academy. As the sun begins to set, they pull up outside the academy. Issa tries to dissuade her from going in, worried she'll be caught trespassing, but Sayu insists, grabbing Yoshida's sleeve. She asks him to come with her. They sneak in through a broken section of the fence at the back. As they quietly make their way through the empty hallways, Yoshida begins to realize where she's heading. They reach a stairwell, and Sayu grips his arm for support. The door to the rooftop is locked, but Sayu refuses to give up. Instead, she climbs through a nearby window. Though fear flashes across her face, she pushes herself through. Yoshida follows, worried, and lands beside her. As they walk toward a bench, Sayu starts seeing flashes of Yuko. Her steps falter, and she collapses beside the bench. She touches it gently, saying it's where everything began and ended. Her voice cracks as she talks about how things might have been different if the academy had put up the fence earlier. She stands and walks toward the new wire fence, gripping it tightly until it cuts into her hand. Tears stream down her face as Sayu begins to blame herself for Yuko's death. Yoshida rushes over and sees blood on her hand. He gently takes her arm, urging her to stop. He tells Sayu it wasn't her fault, but she yells back that she was the reason Yuko got bullied in the first place, that her friendship cursed her. While sobbing, Sayu admits she felt betrayed by Yuko, but hates herself for feeling that way. Yoshida hugs her tightly and tells her it's okay to feel betrayed as that means she cared. He encourages her to forgive herself, to stop carrying the weight of something that wasn't her fault. Sayu collapses into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. She kneels on the ground, letting out the grief she has buried for years. Yoshida stays beside her until her breathing steadies. He wraps her injured hand with his handkerchief and helps her sit up. Sayu thanks him for being there, saying she doesn't know how she would have gotten through it alone. As they leave the rooftop, she pauses to look back at the spot where Yuko had once stood. She whispers a promise to visit again and keep her memory alive. Outside, Issa is waiting. He asks if she's ready, and this time she nods. They drive home in silence. When they arrive, Sayu takes a deep breath and walks toward the front door. Issa calls their mother. She opens the door and, without warning, slaps Sayu across the face. Sayu stands frozen, stunned into silence. Sayu's mother demands to know where she has been all this time and accuses Sayu of bringing disgrace to the family. Before she can raise her hand again for another slap, Issa quickly steps in and blocks her, introducing Yoshida as the man who has been looking after Sayu. But Mrs. Agiwara doesn't even acknowledge him. She turns away without a word and storms back inside. At the dinner table, tension fills the air as Mrs. Agiwara locks eyes with Sayu. With a voice cold as ice, she demands to know what Sayu hoped to accomplish by running away. Sayu, visibly shaking, tells her mother that she never once tried to understand her. Agiwara snaps back, saying she never made an effort to talk in the first place. Sayu then asks if she remembers what she said the day she left. Her mother casually says she has forgotten. That indifference breaks something in Sayu. Through tears, she says that proves she never cared. Agiwara accuses her of running away just for attention, but Sayu fires back, saying she left to escape her own mother's toxicity. Her voice cracks as she recalls being blamed for Yuko's death. The room goes still. Agiwara dismisses it all and says running away was still a foolish choice, especially ending up in a stranger's home. She then turns to Yoshida and demands to know why he is even there. Sayu quickly interjects that Yoshida is only here to support her, but her mother scoffs and tells him to stay out of their family's business. When Issa tries to intervene, she barks at him to shut up. In her twisted rage, she even accuses Yoshida of taking advantage of Sayu and calls him Leonardo de Lolicon. Now livid, Sayu slams her hand on the table. She shouts that she hates the way her mother always lashes out at people who care about her. She praises Yoshida for treating her with more love and care than she has ever received at home, calling him more of a family than her own mother. Feeling insulted, Agiwara bangs the table back and starts ranting about how much she sacrificed because of Sayu, bitterly confessing that she regrets ever giving birth to her. Hearing this, Sayu breaks down in tears while Yoshida grips his glass tightly, on the verge of hurling it across the table, but instead downs the juice and breathes deeply. After a long pause, Yoshida gets to his feet and calmly tells Agiwara that Sayu didn't choose to be born. He says he's willing to take full responsibility for her if Agiwara no longer wants to be her mother, but then corrects himself, acknowledging that it's not truly his place. Then, in a move that shocks everyone, he kneels before her, begging her to do right by Sayu. Not for his sake, but because it's her duty as a parent. Issa follows, dropping to his knees beside Yoshida. Agiwara stares in disbelief, confused and overwhelmed. She suddenly screams at them to leave and orders them out of her sight. Issa quickly steps in and urges Yoshida and Sayu to wait outside until things calm down. Out on the porch, Sayu notices Yoshida wiping away tears. When she asks if he's okay, Yoshida says he just didn't expect her mother to be that hateful. He admits it crushed him to watch her treat Sayu like a burden. With tears in her own eyes, Sayu assures him that it's okay because he got mad on her behalf. As they sit together, crying silently, she thanks him for everything. She confesses that seeing him beg her mother gave her a strange sense of forgiveness. Yoshida brushes off the praise, saying he probably said too much and caused more harm than good. Sayu disagrees, gripping his hand tightly, and for the first time, he laces his fingers with hers. They sit in quiet comfort under the stars until Issa returns. He tells them that their mother has agreed to a compromise. Sayu must stay at home until her graduation. and in return, she won't interfere with her life. Sayu doesn't entirely trust the promise, but Issa reassures her that things might be different now. He credits Yoshida for managing to get through to her, saying even he could never accomplish that. He thanks Yoshida sincerely and asks him to spend the night. Before agreeing, Yoshida requests to speak to Agiwara once more. Issa and Sayu are surprised but let him go. Inside, Yoshida apologizes for crossing the line earlier. Agiwara says it no longer matters and asks why he's so invested in Sayu's well-being. Yoshida replies that their meeting felt like fate. Agiwara says nothing at first, then quietly admits she'll think about his words someday. Before dismissing him, she tells him to return to Tokyo the next day. Yoshida nods, promising that he will. Back outside, Sayu waits, silently watching the stars. The weight of her pain is still there, but something has shifted. For the first time in a long while, she doesn't feel completely alone. After Yoshida steps out from his conversation with the female Grinch, he finds Sayu waiting with a determined look on her face. She tells him she wants a word with her mother too. He gives her a nod of support and wishes her luck before she heads back into the room. Inside, Sayu surprises her mother by kneeling down and sincerely apologizing for the trouble she caused by running away. Her mother, expecting another heated exchange, falters for a moment and admits she isn't ready to apologize in return. However, she confesses that she hadn't even noticed when she started becoming a tyrant to her own crotch goblins. Agiwara then admits that Yoshida's words hit her hard, specifically, the part about being the only parent she had and sucking at it. Sayu, holding back tears, says nothing at first. Her mother composes herself and tells her to focus on graduating before walking away. When Sayu comes out, Yoshida meets her by the door. She smiles, visibly relieved, and says it was the first time in forever that she had a normal conversation with her mother. Yoshida congratulates her, and they head off to bed, finally at peace. Later that night, Yoshida lies in bed trying to fall asleep when he hears the door creak open. Sayu slips in and quietly climbs under the covers. He shifts over to give her space but immediately grows tense when she presses the Yetis against his chest. She tells him this is her parting gift to him since it's their last night together. Despite her attempt to flirt, saying they could make the night memorable, Yoshida calmly rejects her advances. He turns to face her and says that he doesn't need to do the waka waka with her to remember what they shared. Moved by his words, Sayu starts crying and hugs him tightly. Through tears, she thanks him again and asks jokingly if he at least wants to motorboat her soft chest pillows. Yoshida declines but doesn't force her to leave. To avoid temptation, he eventually lets her sleep in the bed while he takes the chair. The next morning, Yoshida prepares to head back to Tokyo. At the airport, Issa asks Sayu to step away for a moment so he can speak to Yoshida alone. He tries to hand over some cash as repayment for all Yoshida did, but he refuses and suggests he use the money to buy Sayu some new clothes instead. Issa puts the envelope away and after a pause, bluntly asks if he is in love with Sayu. Yoshida responds honestly, explaining that he has a thing for older women and therefore never saw Sayu that way. Issa chuckles and says that things could have gone differently if Yoshida hadn't found Sayu that night. He then thanks him sincerely, admitting that Yoshida changed her life for the better. They shake hands, and Yoshida goes to meet Sayu for a final goodbye. Sayu greets him with her usual energy and immediately asks what her brother talked to him about. Yoshida sidesteps the question and instead asks her about the uniform she is wearing. Sayu says it's a secret but admits she wore it to remember the day he found her, as that is the happiest day of her life. When Yoshida says meeting her made him happy too, she confesses her feelings and tells him she loves him. He initially thinks she's joking, but when he sees how serious she is, he gently tells her that he appreciates her but doesn't see her that way. Undeterred, Sayu asks if he might reconsider in a few years. Yoshida smiles and says by then he would be an old man, but Sayu insists that she'll come find him no matter what. She reaches for his hand and vows not to forget him, even if he forgets her. Yoshida tells her to focus on her future, but can't help smiling as she cries while saying her final goodbye. She walks away with tears on her cheeks, and Yoshida boards his flight. Back at the car, Issa asks if she really meant everything she said to Yoshida. Sayu, looking wistful but determined, replies that it definitely wasn't the last time they'd see each other. That evening, Yoshida returns to his apartment. On his table, he finds a note from Sayu along with one of her shirts. The note says she left it behind so he wouldn't forget her scent. She also left her recipe book, but Yoshida challenges himself to cook from memory instead. When he tastes his miso soup and finds it awful, he breaks into tears, realizing how much Sayu's absence hurts. Years pass. At work, Mishima hands Yoshida her latest project and asks for his thoughts. Hashimoto jokes that she has finally gotten smart enough to lead a team. Mishima credits Yoshida for his guidance and says she might still come to him for help in the future. Just then, Ayuri invites everyone out for drinks to celebrate Mishima's progress, but Yoshida declines, saying he has other plans. Ayuri suggests they hang out next time, and Mishima teases that he still owes her a date. As Yoshida leaves, Hashimoto ribs him about spending more time with Asami lately. On his way home, Yoshida calls Asami, who tells him to meet her at their usual stargazing spot. But when he arrives, he doesn't see Asami. Instead, under a familiar lamppost, sits Sayu. His eyes widen with disbelief and emotion. He quickly wipes his face and walks up to her. Leak old times, Yoshida tells her it's too late to be out. Sayu looks up at him with a soft smile and says it's too late to go back now. Then she asks him, just like before, if she can stay at his place for the night. If you were in Yoshida's place, would you let your inner demon out on Sayu? If yes, comment baby oil. Leave a thumbs up if you liked the recap and subscribe to the channel for similar content.